To those who speak more than one language, have you ever overheard strangers talk about you when they didn't think you could understand them? What did they say and what did you do? In a movie theater, before the movie started, they were talking in Polish, wondering if my hair was real, blonde and very curly. They were talking about pulling on it to see, grown-ass women, mind you. I promptly turned around and told them it was real and that there'd be problems if they touched it. They stopped talking after that. Well, not a language story, but my great-grandma once yanked my hair because she thought it was a wig. I was about 13 at the time and had pink hair a bit past my shoulders. I yelled because, despite being 90 plus and frail, she pulled it pretty hard and took a couple strands with her. She said the thing about the wig. I responded, "Why the fuck would I be wearing a wig?" and promptly got in trouble for cursing at a little old lady. Not me, but my grandma. She was evacuated from London to rural Wales in the war. She was about 15, spoke with a clearly South London accent. Some old ladies on the bus were talking badly about her, as the locals tended to do about the evacuees. Didn't know my gran was raised by her Welsh grandmother and spoke it fluently. She told the old ladies off and walked off the bus with her head held high. She didn't have much of a short-term memory in her later years, but still loved telling me that story. I love when the happy stories are the ones my mom remembers, or sad ones that have evolved to happier stories. It's easier to take the dementia that way. Not quite. I'd been learning some Spanish on my own. One of my new jobs was working with a woman who spoke Spanish. First day and being highly judged, I found out later, whatever. She was talking with someone on her phone in Spanish. I didn't understand a word and didn't care. At our next job, someone asks how do you say in Spanish, and I blurted out the response. Her face went pale. Maybe she wasn't talking shit about me in last conversation, but the look was priceless. She likely wasn't saying anything at all about you, but she was overcome with panic with quickly thinking about what she was saying and if anything was bad or embarrassing. Hopefully, she was just talking about her hemorrhoids or something. I'm a jeweler and sometimes do pop-up art shows with a booth with my work on display/for sale. A German family was in my booth and they were all discussing my pieces amongst themselves, but it was all complimentary and really nice, so I didn't feel the need to interrupt. They bought a bracelet and did the transaction with me in English, and as they were leaving the booth, I said "tschüss," which is like an informal way of saying goodbye, which you probably wouldn't throw out there if you didn't speak any German. Their reaction was like, in German, "Bye." Wait, what? And suddenly they all ran back into the booth and were all over me, so excited. I thanked them for all the sweet compliments and they couldn't stop laughing. It was a super cute interaction. I was in Sweden when a German family discussed whether and how to approach me to ask for directions to the city center. I'm very Swedish looking, so when I told them that I too am a German tourist looking for the center, they fell over laughing. Vice versa, a Danish teen who yelled at me in Danish in a McDonald's bathroom startled me so much that I exclaimed, "I don't speak Spanish," to her. My little sister had someone trying to talk to her in Spanish and her brain glitched and she responded, "No hablo inglés," I don't speak English. Dude kind of frowned at her, then smirked and walked away. Like her Spanish is so poor she can't even tell someone she doesn't speak Spanish correctly, lol. I was in a souk in the Middle East and one of the shopkeepers was talking some shit about me, a Caucasian woman, to the others nearby. The others weren't saying much at all. I continued poking around listening to the dude who was clearly bored and having some fun. He did have some items I wanted, but I was going to go with one of the others because he kept running his mouth. One told me in English how much perfume bottles were, and I responded in Arabic. Everyone went silent for a moment, and then everyone but that one shopkeep burst out laughing. One guy asked in Arabic how much Arabic I understood, and I glanced at the rude guy before responding that I understood quite well, thank you, and he cackled and ran off to bring us all some tea. The rest of the shopkeepers there announced that the asshole would take 50% off everything in his stock for me, which he did. We all ended up being friendly after that, and whenever I brought a friend, someone would tell them the story of how I started frequenting their part of the souk. Friends, I have set myself the challenge of gaining 100 followers by the end of the month, and as difficult as it may be, I would really appreciate your help. Please like and subscribe using the button at the top right. I would be very grateful. I had just sat down and ordered some cevavi at a restaurant overlooking Zagreb Central Square when a woman approaches me and asks in broken English if she and her family could have my table. I told her politely that I had just ordered and would be another 20 to 30 minutes. She quite rudely complained in Croatian that these stupid fat Americans had no respect for the locals and that she hoped I choked on my food. To which I reply in perfect Croatian, "Thanks, Grandma. Firstly, I'm Australian, and secondly, you can fuck off into your mother's 3 cunts. People who know the language will get the translation. Haha." Friend and I were sitting in a guest house common room, and there was a Japanese gal and your boyfriend. The girl was making fun of my friend for not being able to use chopsticks, while her boyfriend looked kind of embarrassed of her talking like that. Then I overheard him say something like wanting to ask us a question but being too bad at English to try. I told him in Japanese that he can gladly ask his question in Japanese. His girlfriend did not look amused. My friend and I did not address her earlier mocking. After getting into a bit of a chat with her boyfriend, my friend did, however, give two of them little souvenirs she brought from Germany. She said she felt petty and wanted to kill her with kindness. Lol. A white American friend spent time in southern China as a student where he learned to speak Hakka fluently. He was walking through Chinatown in New York City when he overheard two guys having a heated argument in Hakka. These guys were on the verge of getting in a physical altercation when my friend walked up and said something to the effect of, "What's going on here in Hakka?" They were so gobsmacked that they regained their cool, and my friend chatted with both of them for a bit. They were deeply amused by his fluency, and everyone went on their way, fight averted. He was probably also much taller than them. I have a Chinese friend who married a very tall white American man. When they visit China, everyone oohs and ahs over how white his skin is and how tall he is. When I was in Japan in an antique store, and I asked how much the price was in broken Japanese, my understanding is better than my speaking, and the assistant told me. She then turned around to another employee and said she can't afford anything in here. They both laughed, but I said I actually understood that in Japanese, and walked out. I'm sure they were both mortified, but I wanted to cry. I was so embarrassed. A few years ago, I was in Dubai, and a small group of French tourists, mostly wannabe fashionistas, were taking pictures. At one point, they complained that I was ruining the shots. There is a bitch in the background. I turned around and said sorry in a sarcastic tone. Their faces immediately became red, and they mumbled, "No, it's fine." When I was working as a waitress, I think I was around 17 in a cafe mostly frequented by German tourists. I don't speak German, so I spoke in English to those tables and checked to the few who weren't tourists. A French couple came and ordered in English. I didn't feel like speaking French that day, so I just let them struggle with English a bit. They were talking shit about the food, the drinks, pretty much everything, which was funny because they acted like everything was fine when I checked up on them. When they were paying, I said something like, "Thank you, have a nice day," in French, and the shock on their faces honestly made my day. Traveled to India in 2019 for what would turn out to be a harrowing ad filming job. Among many of the tasks I had to learn on the fly was how to speak and understand Hindi. Cut to 2 weeks ago when one of my situationships needed help picking out a used car from a lot in Milton Keynes, UK. To my surprise, toward the end of the sale, the salesman starts to speak to his staff in Hindi about how they're ripping her off, they don't expect the car to make it back to London, and it doesn't matter, he forgot to fix a vital component. I was also surprised I still understood, but I guess something learned during a period of stress sticks with you more than most. After subtly gaining their background by talking to his son, the same area of India I learned Hindi, in case the dialect was different or I misunderstood, I told the guy in Hindi, I would greatly appreciate it if you would replace the broken component he was trying to stiff us with and drop the price as compensation for his dishonesty. After a back and forth that cemented for him I knew exactly what he'd said and made me feel like I had just crushed his figurative balls in a vice, he dropped the price significantly, repaired the parts while we waited, and apologized enough to make me sick of the word. Our mechanic said it still shouldn't have passed its MOT, but was glad we got it for the low price. Thank you so much, friends, for watching this video. Write your stories when strangers talk about you when they didn't think you could understand them. Press the like button and subscribe. Talk to you soon.